Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're taking a really high-energy deep dive into Oscar Wilde's absolutely scandalous masterpiece, The Picture of Dorian Gray. We're moving way past the basic Gothic plot to actually decode the hidden academic messages, the sharp societal critiques, and the dark psychology that make this novel a total masterclass in subversion. So just imagine for a second, what if a canvas could hold all of your sins? The core of Dorian Gray isn't just a spooky ghost story about a rotting painting. It's actually a terrifying psychological exploration of what happens when an unchanging, beautiful facade hides a grotesque, completely corrupted reality. Now, to truly decode what Wilde was doing here, we're rooting our explainer in some really strong academic foundations. We'll be drawing insights from the American Journal of Language, Literature, and Learning, alongside some fascinating literary analyses from Lund University. We're using these to peel back the canvas and uncover the novel's hidden depths, proving for sure that this is far more than just a simple ghost story. Okay, let's dive right into this. Section 1. The Mirror of the Soul. The Duality of Human Nature. Right at the heart of this story is Dorian's Faustian bargain, where he basically trades his morality for eternal physical perfection. On one side, we have his flawless facade. It's unchanging, youthful, and he moves through Victorian high society without a single hair out of place. But on the other side, we have the decaying portrait. It's rotting, literally bearing the physical scars of every selfish act and cruelty he commits. This magical ledger of corruption shows us the terrifying divide between the public personas we maintain and the private realities we desperately try to hide. And you know, this duality is perfectly captured by Lord Henry Wotton. He's this aristocratic provocateur who mentors Dorian. He observes, "There is something in your countenance that makes a man believe, but in your eyes there is something that frightens a man." It's such a brilliant observation, isn't it? The surface is absolutely perfect, but the eyes, the literal windows to the soul, hint at this monstrous truth, creating an incredible sense of unease. So, what actually drives someone to prioritize the surface over the soul? Section 2. The Cult of Beauty. Understanding Aestheticism. Well, the answer to what drives that superficiality lies in aestheticism. This was a late 19th century movement focused entirely on the idea of art for art's sake. It completely valued pure aesthetic beauty and sensory pleasure over any kind of moral or social instruction. In the novel, the characters champion this ideology to a really dangerous extreme. They live for these refined, totally superficial experiences, collecting perfumes, textiles, and fleeting romances, all while completely ignoring the ethical boundaries or the real-world consequences of their actions. And the ultimate mouthpiece for this movement is Lord Henry himself. He tells a very impressionable Dorian, "The only way to escape temptation is to yield to it." This piece of advice is absolutely central to Dorian's fall. Lord Henry acts as this mentor of pure, unrestricted decadence. He teaches Dorian to pursue pleasure without an ounce of guilt, setting him on a dark path of hedonism, where beauty is literally the only thing that matters, and morality? Well, that's just an outdated inconvenience. Section 3. Decoding Victorian homoeroticism, reading between the lines. You see, Wilde wasn't just writing a philosophical critique. He was actually writing a cipher for his own dangerous reality. Because homosexuality was a punishable crime in Victorian society, he couldn't write openly about same-sex desire. He had to embed hidden codes within his work. Our research draws from a really insightful Lund University paper called Homoerotic Codes in The Picture of Dorian Gray. It explains how the text operates as a brilliant literary language for a society that actively criminalized queer men. To the general Victorian public, it was just a decadent thriller. But to those who knew the codes, it was something entirely different. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how the paper breaks these hidden messages down into 4 distinct codes: Hellenism and Greek art ideals, education and the pederastic relationship, effeminacy and dandyism, and the culture of secrecy. To be absolutely clear here, while Wilde used the historical concept of pederasty as a literary code to signal male intimacy to his readers, we of course recognize today that power dynamics involving minors are abusive and unequivocally wrong. Historically, however, using these ancient tropes was simply a way to disguise male desire beneath the highly acceptable veneer of artistic appreciation and high society manners. Let's look a bit closer at Hellenism. This involves idolizing the male form as the ultimate standard of beauty.
Throughout the novel, the painter, Basil Hallward, is constantly comparing Dorian to ancient Greek statues. By framing his really intense, passionate obsession with Dorian as just an appreciation for ancient Hellenistic art, Basil's true feelings are cleverly disguised. It mirrored the ancient Greek acceptance of male admiration, which essentially allowed Wilde to express these themes right under the noses of Victorian censors.
Section 4, The Burden of Secrecy, Shame in the Shadows. Of course, living a coded life came with a terrible, highly destructive psychological cost. We see this heavy burden in the character of Basil Hallward, who admits early on in the story, "I have grown to love secrecy." Basil's intense, overwhelming reaction to first meeting Dorian forces him into a terrifying life embedded in hidden desires. He realizes his art reveals way too much of his soul, and he becomes absolutely terrified of being exposed. Secrecy becomes both a thrill and a very heavy, isolating prison. And this fear of exposure was grounded in a very dark historical reality. The 1885 Criminal Law Amendment Act explicitly criminalized gross indecency. This law was actually known historically as the Blackmailer's Charter because it created a terrifying environment where the threat of exposure was a literal matter of life and death, or at the very least, hard labor in prison. In the novel, we actually see Dorian ruthlessly weaponize this exact reality, blackmailing an old friend to help him cover up a terrible crime. Which brings us to Section 5, The Price of Hedonism, The Portrait's Reckoning. Let's move to elaborate and see how this builds, because ultimately, a life lived purely for surface pleasure, completely devoid of moral boundaries, leads to inevitable destruction. We can track Dorian's grim progression right here. Step 1 is vanity, that initial Faustian wish for his portrait to age while he remains eternally young. Step 2 is cruelty, where he coldly breaks the heart of the actress Sybil Vane. Step 3 escalates to murder, literally killing Basil Hallward, the very artist who loved him. And finally, step 4, self-destruction, attacking the painting itself. This final act is honestly the ultimate tragic irony of the whole story. The destruction of the portrait is the destruction of the self. Dorian thinks that by stabbing the painting, he can somehow destroy the evidence of his ruined conscience and finally be free. But the painting is his soul. When he plunges the knife into the canvas, he actually kills himself. His servants break in to find the beautiful, completely pristine painting hanging on the wall, and lying there on the floor is a withered, wrinkled, and loathsome dead man with a knife in his heart. It's a wildly chilling ending that leaves us with an incredibly profound question to reflect on. If your soul were painted today, what would the canvas reveal? Would it be a pristine reflection of your outward appearance, or would it show the hidden realities of your private choices? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I really hope this deep dive into Wilde's masterpiece has given you a totally new perspective. Keep questioning the surface, and I'll see you next time.